My name is Paul Andrews, and this is my story of how my wife's personal hygiene ruined our marriage and family. My wife, now ex-wife, is Sarah Ridgway Andrews. We met on a blind date set up by mutual friends. She was fresh out of college and working at First United National Bank. Her business management degree got her into the junior management program. I had just started working at Allied Accounting and was new in town, so one of my coworkers, Steve, set me up on a double date. Steve and Brenda had been dating for about 6 months, and they decided that Sarah and I would find common interests. There's nothing like the excitement of an evening when an accountant and a business intern go on their first blind date. It was pretty obvious that we had one thing in common. We weren't going to have sex that evening. I would have preferred to have this blonde, medium-looking woman rub her body against me. But that didn't happen, as she was acting very wary of me touching her. If she had curves, she was definitely hiding them behind a heavy sweater, long skirt, and jacket. We had a stimulating conversation about our career expectations. We both expressed our dreams for the future. Surprisingly, they turned out to be very similar. We both came from middle-income families, living in more modest communities than our current big city. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and use my accounting background to be able to distinguish a good deal from just a good deal. She wanted to have a stable life while climbing the corporate ladder. Steadily moving up, if you don't count the 2 or 3 times she took maternity leave to have children. It gave me confidence that one day someone would have sex with her. Maybe even more than 2 or 3 times. The evening ended with me walking her back to her apartment, where she gave me a quick, non-passionate hug and thanked me for the evening. It was better than drinking beer alone in her small apartment. On Monday, Steve came into my office and high-fived me. I commented, "You must have made a big score with Brenda on Saturday night if you're giving out 5s. Steve smiled and said, "Yes, Saturday night worked out for me, but I was congratulating you. Sarah couldn't stop talking about you to Brenda. You made a big impression on this girl, a friend of mine. She told Brenda to tell me to give her a call. Just like junior high, isn't it?" It was a nice evening, but I don't think it was all that impressive. I think I'd better call her. Obviously, Sarah knew better than I did that we could make a great couple. After a couple months of dating, I found out what lurked beneath those heavy clothes. This woman could have been a Playboy Playmate hottie. Large round breasts, firm flat stomach, and well-formed hips. She tried to dress conservatively so as not to attract unwanted attention. Through a combination of great sex, great personal relationships built on admiration, trust, and caring for each other, we found ourselves falling in love with each other. The marriage was a foregone conclusion, as were the 2 children, Hannah and Miranda. The sex was great before the kids came along and amazing after they came along. We bought a starter home and the obligatory minivan. Sarah was moving up in her career and was given more responsibilities. I did very well at Allied Accounting and was given a leave of absence to get my CPA certification. Mr. Karstadt, the owner of Allied, took me under his wing and taught me much more than any books or courses. One day after work, he suggested I go to dinner with him. He told me that he was negotiating the sale of the firm to a large accounting group. He said, "Paul, you're my best employee, but you won't thrive around the new owner. I think you need to leave Allied before the buyout and start your own practice. They will kill your entrepreneurial spirit and leave you a miserable person who goes to work every day. You have an entrepreneurial nature that you need to realize. Please take note of that and start planning for your future. I will make sure you take some clients with you when you leave so you don't starve to death." It took me by surprise, and I didn't know what to say other than thank you to someone I admired and respected. Sarah and I talked nonstop about it over the weekend. She said, "Just stay the course and remain an employee of the new firm. Forget risky entrepreneurship and work hard to get promoted in the coming years. You will be able to earn a good salary as a CPA at a large firm." Yes, if that's what I want to do for the next 35 years. Sarah, I'm afraid I'll start to resent the debits and credits I'll have to push through every day. This is my chance to break out of my routine and do what I've dreamed of doing since I was in high school. I'll start by working here at home while I build up my clientele, and then I'll move into the office. Paul, I think this is not a wise move. We have 2 small children. We can't take any more risks, was her wise advice to the banker. I can't wait until the end of my life to take a chance. For me, it's now or maybe never. Sarah pouted, "I don't like it, but I can't stop you. Make sure it works or I'll be really mad at you. And in fact, don't expect me to fund this disaster. I'm opening a new checking account for my income. I'll be paying half of the household expenses. You better be able to cover the other half. I'll do my best, Sarah, was my response, but I wanted to say, thanks for doing nothing, bitch. She relented, saying she wouldn't co-sign loans for my new business. If it all went down, she wanted to be on the sidelines. Since she acted like a bitch, I'm not going to do business with her bank. But I'm sure she'll be there for me when I start making a lot of money. Over the next year, things were tight. Sarah was bringing home money steadily, while my contribution was erratic. By the end of the second year, I was earning a little more than Sarah, but she would prefer that I bring in a steady monthly income. Boring! My business model was changing as I was doing more business advice to prospects, rather than just keeping records of money received and spent. It was what I wanted to do, and I was successful at it. Since I was earning more than Sarah, I started investing more money in my startup. I set my personal income at Sarah's level and invested amounts above that. What I liked to do was this. If I had an outstanding business, I would reduce or waive my consulting fees to get a share of the profits. I would take 5% to 15% of the property for my consulting services and reduce the fee for the monthly accounting portion of their business. This worked very well for both parties. It reduced the required startup capital for potential clients and also gave them the ability to get my sound analysis and advice at any time. It was impossible to audit the firm because I was an investor, but that was fine with me. The increase in the value of the company was far greater than the accounting fees I was losing. The company could buy me out at any time at an agreed-upon market value formula. The only person who was not happy with the scheme was Sarah. She really didn't like that I was investing in startups, so I stopped telling her about it. My accounting corporation's revenues were not reaching the level she thought they should have been. Instead of income, I was building up net worth, but it wasn't reflected on the balance sheet because the stock purchased was valued at the actual purchase price, which was quite low. Because I had staff with deep knowledge and ability, I allowed myself the luxury of spending more time with my children. The 3 months of tax season were a different story. I tried not to miss a single play, concert, or sporting event in which they participated. I managed all the parent-teacher conferences without Sarah. Those were good years, as the kids were excited and Sarah and I were doing better than average for our age. Because of her knowledge and work ethic, Sarah was promoted to assistant vice president of the bank, where she had several people reporting to her. As a result of this promotion, she decided that we needed a bigger and nicer house to match her status as a bank employee. I told her we'd better wait, to which she replied, until the following Saturday. She went to the showing and signed a contract to move. I wasn't happy about it, but there was nothing I could do about it. Thanks to my membership in the Chamber of Commerce, I became friends with several loan officers from her bank. They told me that Sarah used to call me Little Accountant. This disrespect began to manifest itself at home in snide remarks about how other accounting firms were succeeding while I seemed to be napping. I wasn't invited to join her at the bank's Christmas or summer party. Not that I thought it was a fun time, but I felt she didn't want me around her professionally. It was time to talk to her about our relationship. Saturday afternoon, I cornered her in the living room and asked her to sit with me for a few minutes. With a look of disgust, she said, "Can it wait? I'm trying to finish my laundry." "Thank you, but I think we need to talk about it." "It can wait until tonight." "Can you carve out 15 minutes in your schedule?" Over her shoulder as she walked away, I heard, "Yes, I can do that." Then she returned to her task. I didn't bring it up for the rest of the day because I wanted to use it as an example of her ignoring me and thinking that what I wanted didn't matter. My attempt to talk after the kids went to bed was thwarted because she was tired. Sunday morning, we couldn't talk because the kids were getting ready for Sunday school and then all going to church together. When the girls went outside to chat with the neighborhood kids, I saw her grab her purse and head for the door. I stopped her and asked her, "Do you have a few minutes to talk to me?" She snapped back, "Why have you been bugging me about this all weekend? You run around me and whine like a little boy demanding mommy's attention. Can't you see I'm leaving to help mom with the checkbook? I'll be back in an hour. Can it wait that long? It's been 24 hours since I asked for 15 minutes of your time. I can wait another hour." 4 hours had passed when she entered the house and hurried into the kitchen to prepare dinner. Of course, I would then interfere with the conversation. We were already halfway through dinner when I turned to her and said, "I think now would be a good time to talk," which brought an indignant expression to her face. "I think we're growing further and further apart, and I'm very concerned about our marriage." Sarah's fork flopped onto her plate, and the girls turned their heads to look at me. We don't talk to each other like we used to, and I feel like you don't respect me as a husband. I feel like we need to talk about this before it becomes a real problem. Gritting her teeth, she said, "This is not the time or place for this conversation. I'm surprised you would bring it up in front of the girls. You should be ashamed of yourself. Sarah, by your own actions, by ignoring me for 30 hours after I asked for a discussion, you have shut me out again. Is there something going on here that I should know about?" She pushed back her chair, carried her plate to the kitchen, and left the house. Well, I guess our conversation took less time than I expected. My daughters were shocked by this confrontation. Miranda asked, "Are we all getting divorced?" with tears in her eyes. I calmly said, "No, dear, no one is going to get a divorce. Remember how you and your sister used to fight sometimes? Well, moms and dads argue sometimes too. But that doesn't mean we don't love each other or don't love you and Hannah. Mom didn't run away from home, she just went for a drive." That seemed to calm them both down, but it didn't calm me. I cleaned up the kitchen, did a little work in my office, and then put the girls and myself to bed. I went to the bedroom. If she didn't like it, she could sleep on the couch. It was about midnight when she came into the bedroom. She undressed and walked over to the bed. I lifted the covers so she could join me. She snuggled up to me and said, "I'm not saying I was wrong, but I will try to treat you with the respect I want from my husband." I put my arms around her and whispered, "I think this is perfect. I want to be the best husband for you." That lightened the mood in the house for a while. A few years later, she was promoted to Vice President of Compliance, which meant learning about and ensuring the bank's compliance with FDIC, Federal Reserve, and Comptroller of the currency rules and regulations. She had the perfect philosophy for the role. In her view, no action could be taken that was not specifically approved by the appropriate governing body. This is the complete opposite of my philosophy. If there is no rule against it, everything can be done by law. Is there any doubt that this has caused strife in our family? Good thing she didn't know about my investments. They were legitimate, but fiscals like her didn't approve of them. Just about that time, she started going to bachelorette parties on Tuesdays. The longer she attended these events, the later she returned home. The kids were already 16 and 14, so they didn't need a nanny, but they needed parental supervision and involvement. I was always there for them. One Tuesday night, I heard furious swearing coming from the master bathroom and went upstairs to see what was wrong. She was standing at the sink yelling, "Shit! Damn!" "What's the matter?" She growled as if I'd left a turd in the sink. "My damn wedding ring fell in the sink. Do you think you have a chance to save it, or should I call a plumber?" I really didn't like the implication of my abilities. Looking under the sink, I said, "If it's left in the siphon, I'll get it out. It'll only take a minute." Again, in an accusatory tone, as if I had dropped the ring, she said, "Don't worry, I won't need it today anyway." Wow, I thought. You're going on a date, but you don't need wedding rings. It was alarming, and I urgently needed more information. I realized that with the current bitchy attitude, it was better to keep quiet, but be vigilant. With a quick glance at her, I saw that she had moved into the bedroom and was putting on some sexy panties. Lingerie I hadn't seen before. She was trying to avoid my gaze at the way she was dressed. "Girls' night out?" "Just like any other Tuesday night. Don't you remember?" she snapped back. Feeling like I was getting nowhere, I went to the garage to get pliers to remove the trap. She slipped out of the house without a word. Since the drain was on her half of the double sink, I had to get a bunch of her stuff under the sink before I could get to the trap. I was surprised to see a plain brown box lying in the back where the toilet paper was stored. I was even more surprised when I looked inside and saw an enema and syringe kit. What the hell? If anything, she was always complaining of irritable bowel syndrome and diarrhea, even though I thought it was irritable bitch syndrome. Since when did she need to be spritzed? Picking out the contents, I discovered the nozzle was wet. This is serious. It's probably true. The husband is always the last to know. But what did I really know right now wasn't enough? When working on a new business plan, I always try to learn everything about the company, both good and bad. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my research right now. Not really now, since I still needed to get under the sink to find her damn ring. Maybe she'd need it, maybe she wouldn't. Time would tell. I took a pencil and marked the spot on the floor where the brown box stood. I wanted to see if it would be moved within the next week. I also took a picture of a couple of items to see if she put the equipment back in the box just as I had put it. She got home around midnight, undressed, closed the bathroom door, and started the shower. I tried to pretend I was asleep, but if she had touched my chest, she would have found my heart pounding like crazy. She plumped into bed hard enough that I felt like I had to act like I had just woken up. Then I heard her light giggle. Bitch. The next morning I was up early, mostly because I couldn't sleep. I had the foresight to close the bathroom door before my shower. Really, I wanted to check the brown box, and sure enough, the box had been moved. The spritz nozzle was still wet, and the box had been moved an inch from my line. Someone is doing something serious. Using a Ziploc bag, I carefully collected her stinky panties and sent them off to be analyzed. It's been over 3 weeks now that I haven't left a trace on them. Since I was an accountant, I was well aware of what happens with the distribution of property in a divorce. I have done several appraisals for husbands and wives in divorce. Sarah would get the house until the girls went to college, and I would pay alimony and not be able to be with them as often as I am now. I probably won't pay alimony if my investments don't count. She thinks they are worthless, and so do I. I wasn't going to pay for a house where she could have fun with another guy while my girls were left unsupervised. That wasn't going to happen. Now that I have the information I need, I will proceed with a plan of action. The key point for me is to retain custody of my girls. I can always make money, I've proven that. I've proven I'm a good father. Now I need to prove she's a bad mother. Poison came to mind, not chemical poison, but emotional poison. Sarah is a perfectionist and expects perfection from her employees and family. When something goes wrong, it drives her crazy. The simplest problems become huge for her. When she gets mad, she becomes mean to her staff, me and the kids. I use her poison to turn the kids away from wanting to stay with me after the divorce. Then I get to keep the house and the girls. Quietly, I slip over to her alarm clock and turn it off. She hates people who are late for work. After a late and obviously busy night, she might have wanted to sleep in a little longer. The kids came in for breakfast and wondered where Mom was, and I told them that she came in late and was probably putting herself to bed. They understood, as they like to sleep when they have the chance. After watching the conversation she had on her cell phone late into the night, I pulled up the video playlist and turned on silent playback. Hopefully by the time she gets up, the cell phone will be dead. She has a staff meeting Wednesday morning that she says is very important. An hour later, I hear a scream and my name is spoken in vain. I guess it's my fault she overslept after having fun with some guy late last night. I took the opportunity to hide from her screaming by going into the garage. There was enough air pumped out of one of the tires to set off the dashboard sensor on her Lexus. She hates it when the alert obscures her screen. She'd go crazy looking at that screen all the way to work. Hannah and Miranda did not escape her wrath as she ran around the house trying to get dressed, comb her hair, and put on makeup at the same time. While she was in the garage, I switched the door settings to lock so she couldn't open the roll-up door. As expected, running out of the garage, she hit the opener and didn't notice that the door didn't go up. She crashed her back into the garage door, crumpling the bottom 2 panels. The 3 of us went to the door and saw, but did not hear, the screaming woman hitting the steering wheel. As she moved the Lexus forward, I straightened the panels and lifted the door, letting out a horrible squeal. Sarah flew out of the garage with a roar, narrowly missing the mailbox. We could hear her screaming, "Goddamn asshole," all the way down the block. This is going to be more fun than I thought. I wonder what she'll do when she tries to call the office with a dead cell phone. The less I hear from her, the better. I hugged Hannah and Miranda and told them, "Mom is a little stressed right now. She'll feel better when she gets home tonight. She still loves you, and she doesn't love me very much." Then all 3 of us laughed. The alarm clock in our bedroom was now turned up to maximum volume. I let her make sure the alarm clock was on. Unlike my spouse, I got to work on time that morning. My coworkers always know it's a good day when I walk in the door whistling. My good mood lasted until 10 a.m. when my cell phone vibrated so hard it almost fell off my desk. I thought, gosh, that must be my dear wife calling me. "Good morning, darling." That was all I had time to say before the foul language started. In a shrill voice I heard, "You need to get your ass down here and fix my tire." I almost died driving that dangerous car. If you had let me have that Mercedes I wanted, we wouldn't have this problem. "Now fix it!" I nonchalantly said, "You have AAA coverage. All you have to do is call them, and they will take care of everything." "Screw you," was her reply. From her comments, I realized that we weren't really going to have anything this night. Since the morning had gone so well, I told my assistant that I had a few errands to run and that I would be back after lunch. The first thing I did was to go to the security store and buy some small cameras for the house and a voice recorder that I could hide in my purse. I needed to know my enemies and what they were doing. Next stop was to come home and install cameras in the living room and bedroom. I made the panels in the garage usable, but they weren't pretty. They screamed, "Some dumb asshole rear-ended me," for all the neighbors to see and smirk at. Back at work, I went through all my personal banking and investment files. We only had one joint credit card, so I canceled it. Our only joint bank account was for household needs, so I left it open, but reminded myself to make sure her half was deposited every payday. As usual, I made it home before Sarah and was already making dinner when I heard the creak and groan of the garage door opening. The FBI couldn't have kicked the door any harder than Sarah had done. Both girls sitting at the kitchen table screamed and crawled into their panties in terror. The witch approached me threateningly and said, "I've never had such a shitty day. I'm going to go upstairs and soak in my bathtub." The girls and I ate dinner quietly, whispering like 12-year-olds. I went upstairs and asked if she wanted dinner, and she threw a bar of soap at me and growled, "If I wanted dinner, I would have told you. Now leave me alone." It was the perfect moment to make a small slit in her purse and put the recorder inside the lining. I went downstairs and fell asleep on the living room couch. I absolutely hated being in the same bed with her when her alarm clock screeched to full volume tomorrow morning. The blast of the latest rap song on the radio alarm clock was preceded by my spouse's shrill "motherbucker," followed by the screams of two frightened teenagers. There wasn't a sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps who made more noise in the early morning than the ladies in my house that day. While Sarah was in the bathroom, I took the opportunity to go to the garage and put dark brown grease from my lawnmower on the seat of her car. After she sat on that grease on the way to work, it might have looked to others like she had crapped her pants on the way. This time literally, not figuratively. We got about as much bile and rage from her as we had the night before. I also smeared the skirt she was wearing the night before for convincing and hopefully to have someone to blame it on. Her assistant Linda, who was married to one of my friends, called me and told me about the total meltdown when Sarah discovered her crappy skirt. She told me that Hurricane Sarah had made landfall and everyone should be on alert. Over the next few days, I stopped torturing her. Little things started to happen, like one of the two diamond earrings left on the counter disappeared. The dress she wore last Tuesday had a red wine stain on it that she didn't remember. The lining on her favorite shoes was beginning to peel off. Because I knew where her password book was, many of the websites she used were refusing her entry. When she drove her Lexus, turned a corner, or hit the brakes, a ball bearing would spin in her car door. Every day or so, some little thing went wrong for her. It was death by 1,000 cuts for her, and now it was only 500. Now, for the biggest test of all, she came home after work on Tuesday to change and go to a bachelorette party. She didn't say a word to anyone in the house. Before she undressed, she made sure the bathroom door was locked. Everything was the same as the previous Tuesday, including the wet enema nozzle. Everything was exactly the same, except I was following her on the locator on her cell phone. According to the cell phone locator, her first stop for the night was Bonefish Grill. From Bonefish, she went to a dance bar called O'Hara's. I wasn't interested in what she did at the club, I was interested in who she left with. I had been following her movements from home, so I got out and started driving to O'Hara's to follow her to the next place. Just as I was finishing my coffee in the parking lot, Sarah and some guy came out of the store holding hands. They hugged each other and kissed for a long time before parting ways. He drove off in his car and she followed him. I kept at least a block behind them, letting the locator do its job. The Moneybags drove into the Motel 6 just off the highway. From the street, I saw them enter a room with an outside entrance. Since they would be there for a couple of hours, I pulled into the parking lot and wrote down the make, model, and license plate number of her boyfriend's car. While in the dark parking lot, I let enough air out of the driver's side front tire that it was noticeable and sent the low tire pressure alarm back to the dashboard. There was a truck parked in the parking lot, so I found a piece of grease and smeared it on the windshield. I knew full well that the first thing she would do was turn on the windshield wipers. Then the whole windshield would be a blinding mess. It would be interesting tomorrow to hear what was recorded on the tape recorder in her purse. The information I needed would now be in my hands, and I was only halfway to my goal of blowing her up. It was after 1 o'clock in the morning when she burst into the bedroom, undressed, and walked to the bathroom, slamming the door. It was probably time for her to shower and spritz. Her alarm clock and phone were never touched that night. I wanted these events to seem random. A couple hours later, when she was already snoring, I got out of bed and got a voice-activated voice recorder out of her purse. I downloaded it to my laptop, charged it up, and put it in her purse. The next morning, after Sarah and the girls left the house, I listened to the recordings. It was noisy at dinner and at the club, but the tape recorder was quite effective in recording the activity at the Motel 6. I also learned that they partied every Tuesday night and spent every other Thursday afternoon at the Hyatt Hotel during business hours. It was Sarah's turn to book a room at the Hyatt, and they made fun of the conservative bank president for his unknowing complicity. They used their corporate cards to pay for a luxurious night at the Hyatt. Since the bank's main office was not far from the Hyatt, they often used it to meet with bank employees from other cities. Keith remarked how good her husband was with numbers, while increasing the number of times he had entertained my, up to that point, wife. Sarah laughed that my calculator would explode if I knew how many times Keith had entertained her. Something that was beyond the reach of her husband. So when do you plan to divorce your accountant husband? Right after my daughter Miranda leaves for college. I love my girls, but I don't want to spend the best years of my life running around chasing soccer games with them. He's the best mom in the world, and I'm glad he does. I don't know why, but I just can't be around him anymore. I've tried everything I can to make him more successful, but he just wants to be a regular guy with no goals. He's just wasting his life. If you dislike him so much, why don't you divorce him now? Make him pay alimony and spend more time with me. Chuckling, she said, if I got divorced and got alimony, I'd still have to pay for childcare, a maid, and a cook. Now my sissy does that for free, plus brings money into our joint account. I don't have to pay as many household expenses, plus I can stash a significant portion of my paycheck where he can't find it in a divorce. I use it for household expenses while building up my secret stash. Speaking of divorce, when are you going to pull the trigger on your frigid wife? That date, my dear, has already been set. Her father demanded that I sign a prenup before we were married. I only signed it when we added an expiration date of 20 years. 3 more years and I'll have 50% of her multi-million-dollar stock portfolio. Laughing, she said, see, the timing is perfect. The end of your prenup falls when Miranda goes to college. Then we can both leave. After hearing this conversation, I couldn't believe there are people on Earth as selfish and conniving as they are. You know what? They deserve each other. They would have a terrible time together, as they would both try to cheat each other sexually and financially. They were concerned about their safety. They alternated weeks, booking a room at the Hyatt, so neither of them rented a room more than once a month. Now she checks all the tires and that the garage door is open before driving out. However, her nasty and disrespectful demeanor still caught the eye of both me and the girls. As expected, the report showed that her lover's marks were found on the pirate's underwear. I now had enough evidence to go to my lawyer and start the divorce papers. I told Jeff Green, my attorney, to demand full custody of the girls since I had most of the interaction with them. Judging by the way their mother was behaving, it would be lucky if the girls wanted to communicate with her at all. Jeff said, I'll add that, but it will be difficult. I proposed a plan where we would own the house 50/50ths until it was sold after both girls left for college. We would both keep our own investments and retirement funds. Since I have limited my taxable income to about the same as hers, neither of us has to pay child support. She has to pay me the usual childcare allowance, including college tuition. We set aside enough for tuition, housing, books, and food, but not enough for outings, etc. When she became a full-fledged vice president, she joined the bank's deferred compensation program. I will leave that account alone in case she wants my partnership investment. Then I will remember her deferred compensation to parry her claim. In preparation for my divorce, I started taking important things out of the house and putting them in storage. I also backed up my data every day on an external hard drive, keeping it separate from my computer. I planned to keep the house, but I didn't know how violent Sarah would be when she got the summons. On the recommendation of my lawyer, I hired a private investigator to find out who Keith was and where he worked. To speed up the search, I gave him the license plate information. Every year at the end of the third quarter of the fiscal year, the bank begins the process of budgeting for the next year. All employees fill out questionnaires, and each department must reevaluate their performance and budget. At the end of this process, the senior management team hosts a formal dinner/program/dance at the Hyatt Hotel. This is a tuxedo and evening gown event for the senior officers and their spouses, and many of the attendees book a room at the Hyatt. Sarah told me about this event years ago, but by the time she became a member of this group, I was considered unworthy. She kept reminding me of this event, and if I was more successful, I might be able to participate the following year. She thought it motivated me, but I didn't care as long as I didn't get bored in the company of these people. Almost daily, I went through her closets and drawers looking for other information about her infidelity. The week before the celebration, I discovered a new shoebox that was wrapped in the back of her closet. That's where I always started looking, in the back of a closet or drawer. It was a pair of very fashionable Jimmy Choo evening shoes. There was no receipt, so I used Google and got slapped in the face. These shoes cost over $1,000. Since the appointment was in a few days, I had to think about how to counteract this. Replacing the Choo shoes with an old beat-up pair of yard shoes or a pair of Crocs came to mind. Instead, I took the shoes to the workshop, put the heel in a table vise, and very carefully turned the tall, narrow heel a few degrees to the side. The shoes were rewrapped and set in exactly the same place. After finding her brown box, I got a lesson in how to handle sensitive objects. The day before the celebration, the investigator called me and asked me to come to his office because he had some information. As he sat me down, he informed me that her lover was Keith Miller, a senior loan officer at Sarah's bank. I thought, this could seriously affect their careers. They don't report to each other, but her primary responsibility is to make sure the loan department is in compliance with rules and regulations. And that's on top of the rule about no sexual relations between employees. They are on thin ice. I told him, great information, and could you set up some cameras for the senior management meeting at the Hyatt Hotel on Friday night? He already had a picture of Sarah, and I asked him to shoot her walking and dancing. We were both happy. He got another check, and I got some really solid information to consummate our marriage. The movie I watched Friday night was hilarious, so much so that the detective kept laughing the whole time we were watching. She walked around like she was drunk. The pressure of all her weight on that tiny heel endpoint, which was off by a few degrees, was pushing her feet outward, causing her to stumble. She crashed into tables and chairs. At one table, 2 bottles of red wine tipped over on everyone. I plan to submit it to America's Funniest Video as soon as Sarah signs the release. Yeah, sure. Sure enough, Sarah and Keith had secluded themselves in his hotel room to spend the night away. All of this was documented by a tiny video camera slipped under the door of their hotel. Isn't it great how technology has improved our lives in the last few years? Although Sarah got home before noon on Saturday, we didn't see her until late Sunday morning. Spiritually, she should have gone to church that morning, but she stayed home. Sarah used to always come home from work on Wednesday afternoons tired. I suppose it had to do with her late classes on Tuesday nights. She would walk into the house and immediately lie down in the bubble bath. This Wednesday was going to be different. I was going to change the amount of hot water in her tub. She barked what might have been called a hello at me as she walked to the bathroom. I waited for her to find the right combination on the hot and cold water faucet for the tub. I heard the sink start up and realized she was washing up, so I went to the back room. Our house has separate water lines to each faucet and a manifold on the wall that regulates the amount of water in each line. I quickly shut off the hot water line in the bathtub, allowing cold water to fill the tub. As soon as I heard the water stop flowing into the tub, I turned the hot water valve back on. The horrible sound I heard from my beloved wife as she slid into the tub of cold water. Sure enough, because of the bubbles, the water was slippery, and she was wriggling around trying to grab onto something to pull herself out of the cool water. When I rushed into the bathroom to help her, she completely ripped the towel rack off the wall in an attempt to get out. This forced her back under the cold water. It was the hardest thing I could do not to laugh out loud. Finally, I pulled her out, cursing, slipping, shivering, and dousing herself with water. Of course, she slapped me in the face for not having hot water. With a howl, both girls flew into the bathroom and saw their mother throwing another fit. Then she turned to her daughters. "You dirty little bitches. You used up all the hot water, and I couldn't get the relaxation I needed. Damn you!" She stomped into the bedroom to get dressed, and the girls burst into tears. They turned to her to tell her they hadn't used up the hot water, but she shouted at them, "Shut up! I don't want to hear pathetic excuses. Get out of my sight." Which they did, running away crying. It's worse than I thought. I didn't think she would go after them. After me, yes, but not after them. I made the real mistake of thinking where her anger might come out. Then she turned to me. "What the hell are you looking at?" Asshole. Fix my bathtub. You think you can do one simple thing in my house? I invited her into the bathtub and turned on the hot water again. It was very hot. I took her hand and splashed hot water on it and said, "You have a lot of hot water." I stared at her for a few seconds without saying anything, and then I went to dinner with the girls somewhere else. To hell with the dinner I was making. As the girls wept, I stopped the car a few blocks away to comfort them. I told them, "I'm sorry you had to endure that tirade. You didn't deserve it. You are wonderful children, and I am very proud of you. Please forgive your mother for her actions and forgive me for letting this happen. Forgive me for that." It calmed them down and reminded me that I had to be careful when separating the three of us from Sarah. It was too much fun torturing her. When we snuck back into the house, it was already time to go to bed. I left the kitchen utensils where they were and settled down on the living room couch. In the middle of the night, I felt a presence, as if something evil was coming toward me. And so it was. Sarah was standing there, staring at me. "Yes?" was the only sound I could utter. She just stood there. Finally, she said, "I shouldn't have yelled at the girls like that. It wasn't their fault at all. I must have turned the wrong knob. Over the last month, I've been so overwhelmed and upset about so many things that went wrong. Flat tires, garage doors, faulty evening shoes. Every little thing irritates me to the max. I need to get my life back on track." With those words, she turned and walked back upstairs. I think that was all she had to say to me. The next week, I got a real gift. One of my investment partners had a 2-bedroom apartment in Breckenridge, Colorado, and he wanted to see if I wanted to rent it. It was the week between Christmas and New Year's Eve, and it was contracted for a year, but the tenants had to back out. So my buddy left a deposit and offered me a half-price rental. I told him I'd call him back. The girls had been in despair ever since their mother cursed them. Sarah apologized to them, but her harsh words still lodged in their brains and feelings. I asked them if they would join me for a week in Breckenridge to go skiing. I guess so, as they pounced on me, kissing me on the cheek and hugging me. That evening, I booked plane tickets to Denver and back for the 4 of us. I was going to give Sarah one last chance to save our marriage by being together as a family. I paid extra to be able to cancel the ticket. Sarah came home, cleaned herself up, and dressed in casual clothes when she came down for dinner. I asked one of the girls to ask her mom if she wanted to join us on the ski trip. Hannah was chosen because she couldn't stay still and would have blabbed anyway. Hannah said, "Mom, Dad has rented a 2-bedroom apartment in Breckenridge for between Christmas and New Year's. Can you carve out some time to join us? It will be so much fun." Sarah smiled and started to say something. She was thinking. About what, I didn't know. Then her eyebrows rose and a smirk appeared on her lips. "I'd love to, honey, but it's the end of the year, and it's very important to the bank to make sure all the money is properly accounted for on December 31st. I have to stay in town for that. I'm sorry." I was sorry too. Sorry that Hannah was disappointed. Sorry that Sarah had walked away from the invitation with a lame, weak explanation. The compliance department has not one bit to do with the bank's year-end balance sheet or profit and loss statement. Not one bit. The compliance department has no money to balance. You don't have to be a financial controller to know that. The reason for the raised eyebrows and smirk was that she saw it as a chance to spend 7 nights in our bedroom with that asshole Keith. Next week, my private investigator switched the cameras to Wi-Fi so I could have instant access to them while I was in Colorado. There was a scene at home that I really wanted to see. Not the sex of 2 adulterers, but something else. The day we left for Colorado, I had applied jalapeno pepper juice to her tip. If she wanted hot fun, she would get it. As we left for the airport, Sarah was a pleasant mom, said "be careful," and gave them a hug. I appreciated her brief hug and kiss. I told her, "I love you, Sarah," and got a quick "I love you too" response. The girls and I endured the plane ride and the rental car ride to the condo with no problems. Hannah and Miranda had never been to the Rocky Mountains and went out on the deck to enjoy the view and the scent of pine trees. Prompt. I set up my computer and connected to the Wi-Fi camera in our house. As expected, Sarah arrived at the house at 6 p.m. and went straight to the master bathroom for her pre-fun ritual. I didn't need a camera in the bedroom. I had no interest in watching them fiddling. I could see the landing, the living room, and the kitchen. Suddenly, Sarah stumbled down the stairs and screamed that she was on fire. Apparently, she had discovered that her life-saving tube of Preparation H had also been tainted with jalapeno juice. She flailed her arms around trying to cool her crotch. Her face was bright red and contorted with pain. I thought about how much fun my private investigator would have had watching this. She ran over to the refrigerator and pulled the ice cube lever. She and the ice cubes fell to the tile floor as she tried to shove the soothing cubes to cool everything down inside. I started laughing as I watched her create that lipstick. Finally, she sat down on the cabinets and tried to catch her breath. After about 15 minutes, she began to reintroduce the ice cubes. Well, I guess her lover Keith wouldn't be welcome in her lower guts today. I wonder how long it will take her ass to recover. It would be a shame if they didn't have fun all week while the kids and I were gone. Too bad! The three of us went to the Christmas decorated and lit up downtown Breckenridge for pizza. What a beautiful place with a foot of snow on everything. After eating the pizza, we started heading back to the condo when the girls heard music they liked and recognized where it was coming from. It was a teen club designed to entertain teens while parents were having fun elsewhere. Hannah asked, "Can we come in for a few minutes, Daddy?" Luckily, I agreed, because these girls had been through a lot in the last couple months. The dance floor was crowded, and the sounds of laughter beckoned. The girls wanted to stay, but I wasn't about to leave them alone on their first night in a new city. I found a free table away from the DJ and told my daughters to come check on me from time to time. It was perfect for me since I could read my email without thinking about the girls ignoring me. It didn't take long for them to attract a few guys and start dancing, laughing, and talking. They would look back at me and I would raise my Diet Coke, letting them know it was okay. There were a lot of adults there watching their kids. One woman on the other side of the dance floor was very attractive, and as we both scanned the floor looking for our offspring, we caught each other's eyes and smiled. This attractive woman had two boys who stopped at her table to get money, food, or sodas. My girls seemed to spend more time with them instead of playing on the playground. When I finished writing the message, I looked up and saw an attractive woman walking toward me. All the other men were watching her as well. She was wearing ski pants that seemed to have been sprayed on so thinly that you could see the freckles on her ass. Her sweater was tight-fitting too, and it gave off a warmth, even though the temperature outside was below freezing. She stopped at my desk and said, "You must be Hannah and Miranda's father. Why don't you come and join the rest of your family instead of staying here alone?" I tried not to jump up too quickly, but still replied, "I'd love that. My girls are good judges of character, so I guess that's why they're sitting at your table. My name is Donna, and Zach and Misha are my two boys, ages 16 and 14, who are soon to be 21. I smiled and replied, "They are the same age as my girls. Coincidence?" And we both laughed. Donna said, "In the time I have watched your girls and then interacted with them, they are very sweet children. You should be very proud of them." "Absolutely. I can also tell you that your boys seem very well-mannered." "Or is that just because you're watching them?" Donna laughed and said, "You're very promising. I'm glad there is a father here who is as interested in watching his children as I am. I work from home, so I am the one who sends them off in the morning and meets them when they get home. They get a lot of my attention because they are now the most important part of my life." For Donna and the boys like us, it was their first day in Breckenridge. It didn't take long for the four teens to decide where and when they would ski tomorrow morning. Donna and I made some adjustments so that they would check in with us at different times. We decided to see the skiers off tomorrow morning, then have breakfast together, and we will ski in the late morning and afternoon. Over the next week, Donna and I learned a lot about each other, and we both liked what we heard. She was a pleasure to talk to about my problems with Sarah and my plan to divorce her. I didn't disclose that I had harassed her and eased myself into custody of the girls. I wasn't really proud of it, but it was better for the girls to be with me and not that selfish slut. Donna was a widow since her husband had been killed by a drunk driver 2 years earlier. We both had trouble forgiving the people who had changed our lives. Just talking to an understanding person was helpful for both of us. On our last night, Donna and I had dinner alone, without our teenagers. We spent the last half hour of the evening making out on the couch, without the kids. By the end of the week, we had come to the conclusion that we needed to spend more time together. All four teenagers were of the same opinion. It was time to end my marriage to Sarah. I didn't need videos of their adultery since I had panties with their DNA on them. When we got home, Sarah looked tired and exhausted. Maybe she should have come to Colorado with the rest of her family. We had a great time. After seeing my hot wife on our first night in Colorado, I didn't need to see what was going on in my house. It didn't matter to me in the slightest. I had Jeff draw up the paperwork and hand it in at the bank. The girls took the news of our divorce as I had expected. They had seen how our relationship with Sarah had crumbled over the past 6 months. They compared my happiness with Donna to that between me and their mother. It was Hannah who came to the main topic. What happens to Miranda and me now? Where will we go? Taking both girls in my arms, I said, "From the day you were born, you have been the whole world to me, and you will be for the rest of my life. In the divorce proceedings, I claimed full custody of you both, and all 3 of us will stay in this house. You will attend the same school with the same friends. I will continue to cook meals for you and be there for you. You'll be able to see your mom as often as you want." I continued, "You'll have the opportunity to choose who you stay with during the divorce proceedings. Whoever gets legal custody of you will also get the house until you both go to college. It will be your decision, but remember, whoever you decide to live with, your mom and I love you. Either way, you will stay in this house and at your school. Don't tell me now who you want to stay with. This is a big decision, and you have plenty of time before you have to choose. For now, please use my car and go somewhere for dinner so your mom and I can talk. You don't want to see or hear our conversation today. Okay?" After I finished talking to the girls, I looked at my phone to see who had called and texted so many times while we were talking. I guessed who it was. Instead of sending the message to voicemail, I ventured out and called Sarah. Hello wasn't the first word I heard from her. She was melting the plastic of my phone with her scolding. I let her rant, rage, threaten, and scream until she ran out of air. It would have been impossible to get a word in anyway, so I let her roar. Finally, she caught her breath and said, "Why? Why did you do this to me? Why don't you love me anymore? Especially after all I've done for you and the girls. Why don't you come to the house and discuss it?" All I heard was a click. She must be coming this way. Before I knew it, she was bursting through the door, rushing toward me with a clatter and screaming, "Why?" Calmly, I said, "You've been having fun with Keith Miller every Tuesday night for I don't know how many years. How did you think it would end? I gave you a chance to start over by going to Colorado, but you decided that Keith's fun was more important than your family. You made a choice. Now you have to pay the consequences. Sarah, you need to get everything you need out of the house. Settle into a hotel for a while we sort things out. I won't take your things out into the yard and burn them tonight. You can see the girls whenever you want. After you settle into the hotel, get yourself a lawyer and find out what I'm offering in the divorce. I think it's fair, but you have to decide what you want to do. In the meantime, don't bother me except to coordinate your meetings with the girls or to pick up your things. From now on, we have nothing to talk about except our divorce." I went to my office, closed the door, and listened to the clatter of suitcases against any vertical or horizontal surface. The only thing I didn't hear was tears, which made me sad. I knew I never wanted to be with her again, and apparently the feeling was mutual. The process of changing locks, resetting codes and passwords was next on my to-do list. During the divorce proceedings, she was furious. Not that she still loved me and wanted to keep the family together. It was like she wanted to sue me, not me suing her. She wanted everyone to know that she kicked out the weak accountant because he wasn't good enough for her, not me kicking her out for cheating. She was professionally embarrassed that I had filed for divorce. Neither of us had the slightest desire to attend marriage counseling. We were done with each other. Everything good we had had over the years had been squeezed out of us. I am so lucky to have successfully survived a divorce, unlike many other men. First of all, Hannah and Miranda decided they wanted to live in the house with their father. They saw their mother once every week or two. They didn't like her asking questions about me and whether I missed her. I had very little contact with her, and I was usually not around when she picked up or dropped off the girls. Sarah had such disdain for me and my little accounting firm that she wanted no part of it. She wanted to keep her 401k account and deferred compensation funds that she thought I didn't know about. She has to pay for childcare, plus she has better health insurance at the bank than I do. I didn't want her to find out what I knew about dating Hyatt. That was planned to be used later. She took all the furniture she thought was stylish out of the house, leaving us 3 unsophisticated people to use what was left of it. Sarah left all the family photos behind as if we treated them as a shrine to her. I'm sure she had some other resources, but I didn't care. I wanted my children and my business. They were my priority, and anything to do with her was secondary. Someone anonymously sent a video of Keith entertaining Sarah, Keith's wife. Of course, this caused an immediate increase in legal fees across the city. A slut and an asshole move in together in a high-end apartment in a trendy part of town. After the divorce was finalized, I invited Donna and the boys to my house for the weekend. There was no sex between us as we try to set an example for our children. But that doesn't mean we didn't spend time kissing and cuddling. She was the best medicine to get me through the horrible end of my marriage. We both knew where our relationship was headed. She already had a place to stay. We don't have a problem yet, but we do have two 16-year-olds who enjoy each other's company and sleep in adjoining bedrooms. These two need our constant attention. Donna was a registered nurse and worked from home for a health insurance company doing healthcare claims research, so I created the perfect office for her in my home. Epilogue. A year later, I contacted a friend of mine who worked for a CPA firm that audited a bank. I told him a story about two senior officers of the bank using bank credit cards to make illegal dates during working hours. He thanked me for the tip and, after the audit, brought the matter to the bank's president. The bank did not want to publicly prosecute the fraud, but the two officers were fired. The bank also contacted their insurance company and informed them of the theft. The bond-holding company is now pursuing Sarah and Keith to reimburse the bank. The company has refused to allow them to continue working with them, essentially denying them the opportunity to work in the banking industry nationwide. After squandering a lot of Sarah's retirement investments, the couple moved out of their fancy apartment. The company that provided the collateral is suing for damages for bank credit card fraud. Keith's financial problems were compounded by the fact that his wife and children would take a significant portion of his income when he found work again. It was a shame he didn't wait for a prenuptial agreement. Sarah works as a paralegal in a divorce attorney's office. She has learned a lot about the legal and social implications of divorce and is very helpful to her clients. After she spends the day counseling others about divorce, she retreats to her small apartment and mentally berates herself for how her own marriage ended tragically. She doesn't seem to be attracted to the successful businessmen and doctors she thinks she should have married instead of me. At the end of the year, the market value of my worthless investment was over $2 million. It looks like it's going to be a good year, especially since my wedding to Donna is scheduled for mid-June. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.